fascinating rhythm. It's wonderful, long ago and far away. Isn't it a pity? Shall we dance? How long has this been going on?
You write this book. This book was a pretty big book. I mean, we were talking about the success of this book at the beginning of the
Yeah.
interview. And the special, you kill it. Thinking outside the box, and that's what I'm loving about this interview. I'm loving getting to know you and hear these stories, because one of the through lines that I'm picking up is that you recognized the commodity that you had.
Yes.
You leveraged uh, the commodity, and
Mhm.
you did all of that while you were thinking outside of the box.
Well, because I didn't know anything about the entertainment business, but what I
Right.
did know, I don't have to know anything. What I'm good at is I'm a visionary, and all I need to do is put a team around me to execute exactly what I want to do. That's it.
Right. There you go.
I go get the money, I see it, I feel it, and it's going to work. And I put a team around me to make that work. I
Yep.
don't have to know how to direct. I don't have to know this. I don't have to know that. I'll hire somebody else to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's why. That's why after I did Ray, it was very difficult because they said, "Okay, you're a producer." After I did Ray, I made one more a low budget film called Hotel California, which was kind of fun,
Mm-hmm.
and it did pretty well. Um, but I had put a lot of the thing you don't do in Hollywood is invest your own money, okay, for film funds. Well, I was busy putting together a film fund. It was going to be about 50 million, 50 to 75 million. We were going to do 5 films, and then the market fell out in 2008.
Mm.
We lost all our banking commitments, Citibank, everybody, and all the debt financing for our lever for our equity
Mm-hmm.
crashed.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the end of that. And then I got kind of despondent after that point because it wasn't like it is today where it's a Trevor, everybody wants black content. I was like rolling over backwards and pitching and crying and whining because they couldn't see the vision, and me following up with James White, who wrote Ray, who had great, great material. And I wanted to call the series "A Movies That Matter," and all the media work just wasn't there yet because they had not created. I knew where they were going to go with phones and streaming. I
Mm.
already knew. I just wanted to be one of the first to be able to feature a black writer, okay,
Mm.
out there, and to be able to make films about what his experiences were.
Mm.
And James
Mm.
White was he had great stories, let me tell you, and there's still stories to be told.
Mm.
And hopefully one of these days I'll still be able to
Mm.
be able to go back to his wife and be able to option some of that work. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's really about you just really have to know where you want to go, what you want to do, um, and to be able to to maximize those issues.
Mm-hmm.
And the key is that I think the key to getting a shot to making films is to be able to say, okay, I'm not going to make one film for 25 million. I'm going to try to make 3 films for 25 million,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Well, now the
And
budgets
why?
are like a $500,000 to $1 million right now. The sweet spot for independent film, which is actually a good thing, wouldn't you say?
Sometimes, yeah, depending on the quality and what you have to do. If it is really, um, if it just really depends on the genre. But Tyler Perry already proved the model.
Right.
The guy was making $5 million films and getting 60, 70, $80 million return.
Mm-hmm.
He broke the model. He built the model.
Right. Right. Even that
And
his
it
first
was,
film
it
was
was
2.5 million. He put in half, right? Because he was already making money on with the shows, with the
but he
plays.
but he was a he's simply a marketing genius. He
Mm.
had a market already. He basically had those plays and he had a built-in market. He used that market in the churches because of the likeness of the work.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people say it was buffoonery and stuff. Yeah, it's not serious material, but but it is material and it was funny.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are saying, well, we're out here trying to do this, but no, he's quietly making a fortune just on comedy.
Mm.
So I commend him for that. I think he's very smart.
Yeah.
I think that he really understood what he's good at, and
Right.
he doesn't break from it. He doesn't break from it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's really where we all are, and I think that if you're really down for what you want to do, I think that everything that you will need to do that, as long as you really truly believe that,
Yeah.
everything that you're going to need is going to come to you
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah.
That but what that means is that it may not come when you want it.
Mm.
You know, it may not come when you want it, and so like with Ray, I mean, I knew it was going to get made. It took me 13 years to make that. But you can't survive it. So in today's market, it's great. I mean, you have um, there's a lot of great opportunity to go out and make movies and to be able to express yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I think the technology
for
now is incredible for innovation, new ideas, the ability to get your content out there to a wide range of people. One thing about your book that I thought was incredible was how revelatory you are in the book and how you uncover so much authenticity and so much vulnerability about your own struggles. You talk about being at 6 years old and finding your father in a situation that was dire. He almost passed away, and how you have struggled with your own anxiety and your own struggle with substance abuse and have healed from that, which is what a wonderful success story regarding that
yeah,
particular aspect of
in
your
itself,
personal life.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Can you talk a little bit about some of that early trauma, what that trauma led to, and ultimately how
Yeah.
you came out of that?
1962, the pinnacle of my dad's career. He's just now moving from Atlantic Records to ABC Dunhill.
Mm,
I mean, he's riding high after What I Say, and Genius. He just did his album with Quincy. Genius plus soul equals jazz. Um, Hit the Road Jack is, and so you know, then he runs into this roadblock where he gets busted in Philadelphia, as you saw in Ray, the film, where he had gone back to his plane for some heroin and he got busted. And
mm,
so the ironic thing about that, there was so much tension at that time because there was just so much unknown at that point. Because why? They were going to say he was smuggling it because the plane had just come back from Canada.
mm,
So he was coming into the United States. Well, he brought it out of another country. So that means he was transporting it over state lines. And they were going to try to charge him for smuggling.
mm.
That was like 25 years. So that was the anxiety from the record company, from my mother, and everybody who was involved. And so that anxiety was brought in the house, basically, as I told you before. As a 6-year-old, he comes home from that he bails out. He comes home. My mother's stressed. They argue a little bit. They come home and they're discussing, okay, what is the future? Who's going to be the attorney? Blah, 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 so on and so forth. And so, she tells us to go to bed. I said, well, I want to hug dad. Good night. She says, no, he's not feeling well. And well, basically he'd gone to his office and maybe he had done some heroin, shot some heroin. So I went to bed. My bedroom is next to his office. 6-year-old kid doesn't see his father very often. I'm just laying in bed wondering why I can't see him.
Mm.
Why not? I'm just wide awake, and I hear him bumping around in his room. Mind you, I'm about 6 years old, and so I get out of bed. I disobey my mother. I get out of bed, go to his door, knock on it, say, "Daddy, open the door." He wouldn't open up. So as kids do, you turn the knob, and I turned the knob, and there he was. He his shirt was at his wrist was blood red. It was full of blood all the way up to his elbow. There was blood on the walls. He was standing in a 3-foot puddle of blood.
Mm.
and I just start yelling, "Dad, Dad, Daddy,"
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't respond. He's kind of zoned out because he was on heroin, and
Mm-hmm.
he was zoned out. It was almost like he didn't hear me. He used to
Mm-hmm.
zone. He was slinging his arm because obviously it was hurting and he didn't know what was going on.
Mm.
So he was swinging it because it was bothering him. And as he did that, it was just blood everywhere. So instead of me trying to talk to him, I just ran and got my mother. I just started yelling her name. Mom, you got to come quickly, come quickly. It's Dad. And my mother's 9 months pregnant. She gets out of bed and she comes and she sees him and she becomes frantic. She first runs to the bathroom to get a towel, wet towel, to put around his wrist, try to squeeze it and put her arm on it to stop the bleeding.
Mm.
Later it turns out that he had severed his one of the main arteries in his wrist
Mm.
and one of his main ligaments, and so he was in pretty bad shape and he was bleeding a lot.
Mm.
So she tried to control that. And the first thing she tells me, go get your brother, help him get his jacket on. We have to go. While she has to yell at my father to get him to focus and to get him to sit down and hold his wrist, hold the towel while she talked to our family doctor, and Dr. Foster, basically ordered her to go to his office. He couldn't go to the hospital because he was under the influence of heroin. He was
Mm.
out on probation. He was out on, probation. They just, got him out on bail. So he could not go to the hospital because he's under influence.
Mm.
So our family doctor had to do surgery on him in his doctor office and to stop the bleeding, to sew up the artery, um, to get him and wrap his wrist so that it hold his wrist to keep him from bleeding until he came down. And then they did surgery on him in the morning. And then they put out a press release that he had cut himself on the edge of his desk, which he did. He had a glass top on his desk, and he probably hit his wrist on the edge of the glass,
Mm.
and that severed his artery. Just seeing that, I'll never forget it. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget that. And that was spooky. That was scary. And pretty much I lived with that for years because, even after he got clean, I used to wonder if he was going to be around, if that was going to happen, you
Mm.
know. So it was kind of an anxiety, and the ironic thing during that period of time, after that happened, my father still didn't stop shooting heroin. He went back on the road. He did that for couple of years. Ultimately, the wheels fell off between he and my mother. She just wouldn't deal with it anymore,
Mm-hmm.
asked him to leave the house. But my mother made him sit down on the edge of the bed, and she said, "You go up there and talk to your son while you have to leave." And so
Mm.
he sat me on the side of the bed and talked to me that he had to leave, and that he had to get his life in order, and that my mother wouldn't allow him to stay there anymore until he got his life in order. And I watched him leave in the taxi. The next thing we knew, the house was still being built in View Park. We live in Leimert Park, and all I know is that we basically moved into the new house. My father wasn't with us yet.
Mm-hmm.
House was already furnished, everything, and we move in, and it's kind of traumatic, being, we go several years, almost 2 to 3 years, where he didn't. The the court proceeding was, being appealed and stuff like that. It was going back and forth. By this time, it was about 3 years, and so within that 3 year period of time, he's kept touring, kept, you know, going in and out, be with my mother, and ultimately, it just hit the fan. He decides to go into rehab. But
Mm.
before that, we move into our home. He wasn't there. It's a 12,000 square foot home that was built in View Park. Tennis court, pool, just beautiful, beautiful home with mixed emotions. We, I'll never forget with him being in St. Francis Hospital at that time. We basically went to New York to Flushing Meadows to the World's Fair at the time, and here I get a chance. I'm introduced to all these Picassos, and I'm 9 years old. Picasso's paintings, and you got the Mustang, and then Lyndon Johnson's presentation about the Great Society. This is all during the '60s, and the world is changing around us. And then returning to LA, as we're going to land at LAX, the whole city is black.
Mm.
The whole city is black, and we go through this. But how I relate to that is because, and why that was so traumatic is because I think the behavior of it all, the experience and living with my father going through those issues and being able to go to work, at least he wasn't spiraling out of control at that point, but his life literally had spiraled out of control when I found him bleeding to death.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was just a sign that God gave him another chance at life.
Mm-hmm.
For him to make a decision about what he was going to do, what was most important, and how he was going to change to be able to become all God had made him to be.
Mm-hmm.
Was he going to squander that opportunity? And I believe that that has a great effect on you, what you see, and when you see people that is the dysfunction of it all. We had the wealth. We were rich at that point. He was rich at that time.
Mm-hmm.
You have the home, you have the life, but everything behind the closed doors is so dysfunctional.
Mm-hmm.
The women, he's womanizing, he's having kids born here. My mother's dealing with this, going to court with him, to stand by his side with these paternity suits. Everything as a kid, I'm being teased as I go to school because it's all in Jet magazine about the women, all these different things. It was crazy. It was insane.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, to deal with as a child. My brothers were so young, they don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
They never ever knew that he was on heroin. I was the only one that really experienced that.
Mm.
So, my younger brother was only 3 or 4 when that happened. He never remembered that I found my father bleeding, and it just stuck with me all my life.
Right.
But we were bound from that point on. I mean, we were intertwined at that time because I had saved his life at that time, and we never really talked about that ever again until later, until my life when I started to have issues with substance abuse. And so, the perils of that and why I wrote my book is because, here you're talking about the power of money, fame, being black in America.
Mm.
What did that mean? The persona of being Ray Charles and living in his home and people not really knowing the shows and the dysfunction of it all behind the closed doors and all that we had to deal with and all the press and just my mother trying to shield us from the death threats in the '60s because he wouldn't play, in Jim Crow states.
Mm.
So we were getting death threats in the '60s, and my mother said, "We're going to build a compound where you don't have to leave here. You will play, and I will always know where you are.
Mm.
Security everywhere." So that was my life. That's very stressful, very different. I didn't know anybody who was living like that, so how could you relate that to anybody else?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's father had 2 planes and a bus in a 12,000 square foot house.
Mm-hmm.
People were buying a house cost $200,000, $150,000. That's a lot of money in 1964, 65,
Yeah.
which was paid for. Everything in it is paid for. So that's the kind of life I was living. How do you explain that to anyone?
Right.
How do you relate? How do you relate that to it? And so ultimately, living this kind of life, and it was just very traumatic, for the first 10 or 12 years, I almost lose my mother, when I'm 7. After she gave birth to my younger brother after that incident, her appendix burst and she laid in bed for 2 days. And no specialist in the country wanted to do surgery on her. So Dr. Foster, our family surgeon, our family physician comes to her rescue, again, our rescue. He does emergency surgery on her and saves her life. But consequently, she had about 7 other surgeries after that. So my mother is sick. We have her nanny named Myrtle who took care of us. So my dad is still on the road. and Myrtle took care of us and saw to us, um, and nurtured us during that period of time.
Mm.
And so it was just so much trauma at that time.
Mm.
I almost lost my mother. I almost lost my father, and it was just a lot to deal with. And ultimately that will pay people following. Once they started the divorce and stuff like that, it started to later in life as a teenager, it started to affect me.
Mm-hmm.
And so the amazing thing about substance abuse that I learned in my experience, because I was an athlete all through high school, so I didn't do drugs and pills and alcohol and cigarettes. I didn't do all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was just square. I was an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
I went to school. I loved going to school. I loved playing sports.
Mm.
And that's all I want to do. Play sports, chase girls, and go home. Get
Yeah.
up, go to
Yeah.
school, play sports, chase girls, do homework, go to school.
Yeah.
That's all I
Yeah.
wanted to do.
Yeah.
You know, and when I went to college, it started taking its toll when they started to get a divorce. And that's when I started to experiment with cocaine
Mm-hmm.
as a social. And during that period of time, it's like I'm still an athlete until my injury got so bad. So it was a great escape. I didn't live. I moved away from home, and I lived close to the college, and that's when I started doing it socially, and that's when you start building this persona that, okay, I can do this stuff, I can control it, and you're dealing with it, and really not going home, because home is really a place where it's just not really kosher. It's
Mm.
just a bad atmosphere. Didn't want to really deal with that, so I guess I was medicating in a different way
Mm-hmm.
um, at that time, and ultimately that would continue, and ultimately I developed a substance abuse issue because I always felt that, not knowing the perils of, number one, what I learned is I knew the perils of doing drugs.
Mm.
I knew that. And I broke my own rules against myself.
Mm.
And I started doing that. Never ever go against yourself. Your own spirit, we're all spiritual beings. We all know what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
Your spirit will always guide you in the right direction.
Yeah.
And if you have to ask yourself more than once, 3 times, don't do it. You know better. And your spirit is guiding you already.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it. Well, if you go against yourself, you're going to lose every time.
Mm.
I believe whether that's drugs, I believe that is being promiscuity, being promiscuous and doing stuff, saying, "Oh, I was doing drugs, so I tried this and I tried." No, really, you are who you are, and if you're gonna just go out and do some wild stuff, say I just wanted to do some wild stuff, and that's what you wanted to do.
Right.
Doing drugs is not going to make you do anything other than what you do, who you are.
Mm.
Now, if you decide to go against that, and I went against that. I knew the perils of doing drugs. I knew the perils of what I had gone through with my dad
Mm.
and what it had taken our family through. And while I was in college, I started really indulging, and then I got introduced to freebase, and I started doing that. Rich man's high. Nobody was doing this stuff. I mean, I'm up in the Hollywood Hills, and
Mm.
there's women and girls, and we're having fun, and it's all good. And then all of a sudden, I'm staying up 2 nights in a row. I'm up. I'm in college.
Mm.
Can't go to school, miss class for one day, didn't go to school the next day. It's a problem. But the one misconception I had about that is that I always thought that you could have that double. By watching my father have a double life, I always thought that I could. You can do the drug. You can go out here and binge a little bit, do that stuff, and then come back to your family, kids, and fiance, and stuff like that. And that's not true.
Mm.
That's a lie, and you're telling yourself a lie. And knowing the perils, I went down that road, and I paid a heavy price for that. By getting addicted, and really, it turned out to be an anxiety issue in which I decided basically to deal with it by doing cocaine, where you can zone out. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And also, cocaine really was a liar because it makes you think that, oh God, I got this idea, this great idea, and You think you got to do this to get ideas and stuff. That's just a lie. It's just drugs, and it's euphoric, and you only feel that way for a certain period of time. But you're chasing it, and you want to feel that way. So you're snorting it all the time. I got to school, like break time, I'm snorting cocaine, you know. But it was also a status thing where, oh man, he's got cocaine. It was almost a status thing. So I fell into that trap, and I fell into it for a long time. And then I finally kept walking down the street where I knew there was a hole in the ground, right? And I kept walking into the hole, knowing that it was there. Okay, you walk down the street once, and you fall in a hole, and you lay there for a minute. You get out, brush yourself off, and said, okay, all right, I know there's a hole in the road down that street, right? Okay, you've learned your lesson. The second time I go down that street, I fall in the hole again because I have not learned my lesson. I turn down that street again, knowing that there's a hole there. I fall in there. Now I start blaming other things. Oh, my parents are going through divorce. I don't want to hear this. Dad is this. Mom is that. Becoming bitter and start blaming other people for why I'm doing this.
Yeah, that's right.
I get out of that hole and I brush myself off again. Well, I walk down that street again, knowing that not to go down that street. You know what's down that street, which means don't buy that stuff. Don't get any cocaine. Just deal with life on its own terms. What do? I go use it again. Start binging. I'm up all night again, whatever the case may be. This time I fall in the hole. I can't get out because now I've gone down the rabbit hole, and I lay in that hole for a long time. I lay in that hole for years. Binge, stay clean for 3 years. Binge, stay clean for 4 years. But the binges get worse. The binges may last for 2 years, off and on, off and on. It's choetic. It becomes choetic. My kids, I'm no longer the father I'm supposed to be. I'm not being a good father at all. Now I'm repeating the same mistakes my father committed. I'm not being responsible as a father. I'm neglecting myself, my responsibility to my children, to my lady, to my girl, who I was going to marry at that time. And I have to now, because I have custody and I'm a single father, I have to give custody back to my ex-wife. While I lose my fiance because I couldn't get a grip on why I was doing what I was doing to myself. It had gone from being casual to a self-destructive pattern.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out why I was doing that to myself at the pinnacle, having all this success. Then getting sober, not using, but not really recovering. You can get sober and not use. You can get sober, don't use, but you're a tragedy away from using again. See? Okay, you're a thought away from being triggered to go back and do it again. Okay, or you're a thought away from just thinking of, oh, I can handle it. Let me just go back and I'll just do a little bit, and that kind of thinking went on for years. And then finally just went down a rabbit hole, went to rehab, and tried to pull it together, and still not in recovery, just abstinence, pure abstinence.
Yeah.
5 years away from my family, assets in array all over the place. I'm just all over the place. Okay, but I'm trying to recover. The main thing is that when what I learned is that in order to recover, you have to deal with the drugs first to get it out of your system, out of your body. The problem with that is that if you binge like that and you've been using for a long time, the dopamine level in your brain may not recover for years, if it recovers at all. So chemically, you have to deal with yourself first. You can't deal with yourself until you deal with the chemicals first.
Wow.
Okay, there's no guarantee that chemically your dopamine level will ever be the same again.
Mm.
So you have to deal with that. That's why a lot of relapses happen really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Because why? Your body, if you're not working out, if you're not doing something healthy where you have natural endorphins, where you feel, where your brain is being fed,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter. The pleasure center of your brain doesn't matter whether you're doing sugar. It doesn't matter if you're drinking alcohol. As long as it's being fed and it's satisfied, you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what happened for years. I just never did it. And then, I come back and said, okay, look, okay, I'm back. Let me go back. I'm going to buy the rights again for my dad. I'm going to make Ray. I'm back. I'm out of obscurity. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm living in a desert, and obscured, living a good life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But obscure, because I'm just not stable, you know, didn't know if I was going to relapse or whatever the case may be. Then I appear back and I just said, okay, I'm back. Give me the right to go out and make the film again. So I do that. So I get on the set of Ray, and nobody from Ray ever heard this. I just let the rumors just go. But I get on the set of Ray, and God, you know, I had to start reliving my whole life again by going through
Mm.
that screen. And that's when I found out I was not on solid ground again,
Mm.
because God, man, being on the set of Ray again started to create anxiety for me. I mean, a lot, because I'm reliving
Mm-hmm.
everything that had been written, everything that he had done, and I'm just looking at the stuff and remembering all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one major scene where Jamie Foxx, I'll never forget it. Um, Jamie was in the den after he had come from Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
and after being busted, and he had come home. He's in the den,
Mm-hmm.
and that scene triggered so much anxiety that day I went out and I bought some more cocaine and I relapsed while I'm on the set.
Mm.
And I was able to I was able to function for a while, but ultimately I had to leave the set right in the middle of making the film. And I came to LA and I didn't go back to the set because why? I didn't want to represent myself while I was using.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd rather have them have rumors about where I was or what I wasn't doing
Mm-hmm.
than to actually see me on the set in being a wreck.
Yeah.
I just left. And number two, I had to go back to LA. I just could not go back to the set.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I came to LA and I had to gather myself because I had to go to Russia to make a film. I was doing a film about Alexander Pushkin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I had to gather myself because I had to go there. The
Mm-hmm.
ironic thing is that I relapsed and I started doing drugs and I was like going down a rabbit hole. And then I was able to get a grip, get on a plane and go to Russia. And the ironic thing is when I left the country, I never touched any drugs,
Mm.
never touched drugs, period.
Mm.
As soon as I landed back here again, got the anxiety again.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't able, but my main, my main disappointment about that is that I never enjoyed making the film because I never truly enjoyed it because I couldn't experience it.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't be on the set to experience it all the way through
Right.
because I was having problems,
Right.
and I didn't want those problems to surface on the set. So
Right.
I left the set. I left the set, and I didn't care really what they were saying about me as long as I didn't show up in a condition other than what was good to represent myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I never showed. I said, look, I'll see dailies and stuff like that. As long as the film is on track the way it was supposed to be, I'm good.
Yeah.
And luckily, it turned out to be all that it was supposed to be.
How'd you actually make the recovery transition where now you're recovered?
Well, this is another story for the ages. Look, so what I do is I got back and I didn't even go to the Academy Awards because the people I was producing the film with would not get me tickets for my mother to go. Okay. And I was fuming. I was literally fuming. And I blame, I never really talked about this, but they did a lot of stuff, man, that really Stuart Benjamin and those guys, they knew better, man. They took advantage of the situation. And they knew better because, my mother sat down with Kerry Washington, Coach Kerry Washington while he was on the set. And for them to disrespect her, I just said, forget it. I'm not going to show up to the Academy Awards either. And I didn't go, and that was my time to shine because it was something that I had worked so hard to do. And I literally, just sat there and watched Jamie quietly win. But, I was crying, I had some tears because I sat home because I refused to go and celebrate with people who had so much disrespect in reference to my family, in reference to what I was going through. And see, these are the things that they don't, Stuart Benjamin and these guys are running around. Ray Charles, the movie would have never got made without me. Period. End of story. And they know it. He didn't care about Taylor Hafford. He had great respect for Mr. Anshoes. But he didn't care about Stuart Benjamin or Taylor Hafford. It was me. And the first thing he said to me when he talked to me when I was in Russia, where in the hell are you? Why did you leave the set? I said I had to leave the set because I had already had a contract to make another film. I had to go contractually to make this other film, which was 3 weeks before they finished shooting the other film. But everybody thought I was in LA doing drugs, but I was in Russia because I wasn't there. I was gone out of the country already. And so I had to straighten that up with him when I came back, when I found out he was sick. Because I had been in Russia. My girlfriend was Russian at the time. And I was in Russia going back and forth at that time. And I talked to him about that because he was livid with me. He said, why did you leave the set? Nobody knew where you were. It was none of their business. This is why. And I ran that down to him. And ultimately, basically, what happened is that then ultimately my father ended up passing. And I went down the rabbit hole again. And I went down the rabbit hole again. And, man, that was a bad one. And what I decided to do, my ex-wife just felt like, hey, he's going to kill himself. He's got too much money, and I was just really, really depressed. My dad had passed away, and I wasn't a really great frame of mind. So she called the police. They came. I was living in the Le Méridien Hotel, and I had a suite, Le Méridien. I felt it was safe there, and I was just isolated. And ultimately, I came out of there one day, and I think I had some drugs on me, something. Basically, they found paraphernalia or something. I got arrested. I bailed myself out like an hour or two. But what I did do to make sure that I got into a program, so I urinated, and it had cocaine in it. So I basically was forcing myself to go do something about my issue. I needed to do that. And so that got me in front of the judge, and the judge says, look, what do you want to do? I said, look, I just need to go to a really, really good program where I can test and I can get myself together because I'm just not in a really good frame of mind, and I just really need some time to pull myself together. And he said, okay, you got it. And the judge was great. He got me into a program called Impact. Impact was really where I started my recovery. And it was Impact where basically I was able to not only meet Raymond May, who was a great mentor to me, and who got me into Impact. Okay? Consequently, got me into the program on a probationary basis. You had to work hard. They just didn't accept you into that program. And I ultimately pulled myself together, got an outpatient, and I forced myself to live in a sober living home to where I had to live by guidelines, curfew and stuff like this. And I just reacclimated. I just redisciplined myself, my life. I didn't have to do that. I had enough money to do whatever I wanted to do. I just felt that was necessary for me, okay, in order for me to discipline myself. And I learned a lot in that program. I got a great sponsor. I also met somebody who was very instrumental in my life, who's a pretty big music mogul. His name is Jeff Jam.
His name is who?
And his name is Jeff Jampol.
Okay.
And he was on the board of, he manages the estate for the Doors, Rick James, a lot of different artists. And he was on the board, and I met with him. And he said, look, let me help you out. He said, you haven't gotten recovery yet. Let me help you out. And he got me a sponsor. And let me tell you, once I got this sponsor, he was so great because he worked with me for 6 months. And after that, I was never the same again.
Mm.
You know, it really corrected the way I thought about things, how I process things, how not to blame people. Basically, you know, if you're going to point the finger, then find out what part did you have to play and what went wrong. And if you're able to do that, you know, you'll find that you're in the middle of all that. So what are you going to do about yourself?
Mm.
And that's what we focused on. And we worked the steps, went through those steps, and the fourth step. And what I decided while I was going through that process, because he just he just shook me, like it was almost like he took me, grabbed me, shook me to life and said, "Wake up. Okay, this is your life. You got to take a hold of your life. You are responsible for your life.
Mm.
You are responsible for what you did, and this is what you're going to do to live a good life." And once I got him, I got one more sponsor. His name was James, you know, and Stalwart. And James was a person who I just related. He was able to relate to me and my lifestyle, what I was going through, the celebrity junk, and all this Ray Charles stuff. And God rest his soul, was a very, very strong man and a very good man for me. Helped me through to really find myself in recovery and to be all I am today. And why I say that is because I was so important to him that on he was having a heart attack. He called me out of the clear blue. He said, "How are you?" I said, "I'm doing great." He said, "I haven't heard from you. I just wanted to reach out to you and tell you, I was thinking about you." And he said, "I just want you to know that no matter what you do in life, what you face in life, what you have to do, you never have to use it."
Mm.
And he said, and I said, "Well, James," I said, I got that. I said, what's really the matter? He said, "I was just thinking about you, and I just want you to be well.
Mm.
You have a great life ahead of you, and I just want you to be well." And he said, "I'm not really feeling well. I'm feeling really sick." I said, "Well, then why don't you go to emergency?" He said, "I'm not feeling well at all." I said, "James, you don't sound well. Why don't you just call 911?" Well, he died after he got off the phone. He was having a heart attack while he was talking to me.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And they found him in his office at night. And so I say that to say this, that if he thought that much about me to call me while he was dying, while he was having a heart attack, then I felt that it was most imperative for me to value my own life as much as he valued my life. And that changed my whole life,
Mm.
that phone call.
Mm.
Even though I had been in recovery for over 5 years, that changed my life forever. And I owe my debt of gratitude wherever he is in heaven.
Mm.
Uh, he,
That's deep.
he made me
That's deep.
he made me realize that my life had value.
Yeah.
And he called me knowing that he was sick, and it was probably the last thing that he would ever say. And that had a great effect on me. And that was 15 years ago. And life has been great in recovery.
Mm.
And when it propelled me to write the book, because when I wrote that book, I still was kind of foggy. It was like 3 years after recovery, and
Mm-hmm.
I was like, my thinking was still kind of foggy. That's why I decided to write the book
Mm-hmm.
almost as a teenager and a 9-year-old. The first 10 chapters were written as a 9-year-old. I was recalling my life
Mm-hmm.
up until we moved into View Park.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then there I had to rush through as a teenager and in my 20s and try to compact a story,
Mm-hmm.
okay, in maybe 7 chapters about that. And I think that, the greatest revelation is that what I found is that I never got treated for the anxiety. But
Mm.
what I did learn is, okay, well, how are you going to deal with it if you're not going to take medication for it? Well, I turned to a meditation,
Mm-hmm.
and I turned to just the positive reinforcement about really who you are and really understanding who you are, as a spiritual being, and that all the answers that you're searching for are right within you if you just stand still and basically listen.
Mm.
And
Mm.
and and if you, whatever it is that you want to do,
Yeah.
and you focus on that,
Yeah.
and you're living right, and it's right, it's always right thought, right action.
Yeah.
And if you live your life like that, having the right thoughts and the right action at all times, no matter what your head may tell you to do, but it's really coming back and centering yourself back to you know, to who you really are spiritually,
Mm-hmm.
you'll be fine, because that's always where you're going to revert back to.
Yeah.
And that is a lesson in recovery, and that's how I recover.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I live by. And knowing that, only God and your ability to basically say, okay, if you take this away from me, I'll, that's it. And that's what I did. And
Mm-hmm.
you don't have any cravings. And then what happens is that you get the power and the strength to deal with life on its own terms.
Mm.
And if you're able, and that means that everything that comes at you, everything that you deal with, you're able to deal with those things, and you're able to feel. And feeling is the most important thing, is that you have to be able to feel the ups and the downs and the rounds, okay, in order to know what is good,
Mm.
and to be able to recognize what's good and recognize what's good for you. And so what I realized is that, okay, I can't do the celebrity stuff. I'm not into that. I'm just into being me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to tell everybody how much money I have and try to show them how many diamonds or how many cars I have and all that kind of stuff. I live a very private life. I just basically, I'm very humble about where I'm at. I don't flash
Mm-hmm.
all that I am. My investment was my mind, and I invested my money very well. And I'm financially sound. Nobody will be able to tell if I was worth 100 million or whatever, because I look the same,
Mm-hmm.
and I act the same.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what creates balance in life,
Mm-hmm.
and it creates balance for my family, and not to give them too much too early,
Yeah.
and to know that, for me, to know that they're well taken care of. So if I leave here tomorrow, then they're well taken care of. I didn't flaunt it. I didn't do it, and that my family will survive a long time. My dad didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Family was not first with my father. Family is first with me,
Yeah.
in good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing. And that's what I learned through. And I grew up. I became an adult after I used,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
And I think that money was always about money, 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 money. Get money,
Yeah.
money, money. And I got the money, and I was always stressed out. I was doing drugs and running fast and chasing girls and
Mm.
cars and doing all the fast stuff. That was going to kill me.
Mm.
And maybe it almost did. By the grace of God, I just didn't have a heart attack or anything.
Yeah.
But I can't talk about the people who I saw that went by the wayside and left here very quickly,
Yeah.
and results from that. So I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful
Mm.
for, man, somebody who's out there struggling with that. They just need to know that they don't have to struggle, but you
Mm.
do. You have to just find out that you have worth, and that there is a good life waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you want.
If you want to.
And the most important thing is that I never wanted my grandchildren ever to be able. I wrote the book for them to read,
Mm-hmm.
and I wrote the book not to be a Times bestseller. I wrote it as a testament to to my failures, because they would know what failures were.
Yeah.
They would understand what failure is, and so that they would not fall in those pit holes.
Yeah.
It wasn't great for me just to talk about, okay, I did this, not talking about the failure
That's
and
right.
not chronologizing the failure.
Yeah.
So my granddaughter's 17 now. She'll be reading, and I told you need to read that so you can have questions. So I wrote it for you, because none of you ever will experience me going through that, but
Yeah.
your mother and your aunt experienced that,
Yeah.
and they still have a lot of trauma from that. So I wanted to write this book that people
Mm.
can feel at ease about,
Yeah.
and to let them know that it wasn't their fault, you know.
Yeah. I
And
love
life
that.
is life is good, man. You
Life
know.
is good, man. I love that story. Just all the aspects of it, man. It's such a blessing, man, to hear the journey. And now, you know, we're in this COVID situation.
Yeah.
You are doing a lot of incredible things, and you got to definitely leave us with with where you are right now, because you're a busy man. I'm so grateful that you took this time to hang out with me. Uh, yeah, man, wrap us up with what you're doing.
You know, I just got out of a relationship and got reacclimated to my ex fiance who I broke up during that period of time,
Yeah.
and I hadn't seen her, 30 years. And so I wanted to make amends to her in person. I wanted to tell her how sorry I was and that it wasn't her. And I was just sincerely, I wanted to see her in person.
Hmm.
So I flew during the pandemic to Hilton Head. I said, okay, let's just get together. Um, I just want to see you and I want to tell you how sorry I am. I'll get you a room and, we can just talk. I just want to see you. So we did that. And um, lo and behold, we saw each other, and it was almost as if we had never.
Mm.
So, so the rest of the story would be it would be complete here, and it was an amazing thing. But I'm building a community right now in Riverside County for the development of the disabled. I'm building four. I have 9.5 acres in Paris, California. So right now I'm in the process of getting tendered by the state of California in a regional center in Riverside County. So I'm trying to build independent living for those who are developmentally disabled, who are higher functioning,
Mm.
to where I have only 3 clients in a home, to where they feel like it's their own environment, where they get a chance to live a good quality life. Each home will be on 2 acres. It's rural. They don't have people trying to take their money, trying to take advantage of them sexually. It's just it's a they're living in a really nice home, and they get a chance to live a really good life that sometimes doesn't come in most of these homes or some environments. I want to do that. Um, I have a special place, in my, for that. I'm working on a musical right now. It's a great time to go in a different direction for Ray. We want to do a totally different story, a more intimate story for Broadway, um, to make it more personal, to make it more victorious, and taking a deeper look into his life, from Ray, and not trying to interfere with Jamie's performance in Ray.
Hmm.
Okay, so I always left that hole there so that we can tell another story sometime, at some point. And then, I'm working on a documentary right now with Salim Amin. His dad was the great Mo Amin, who was a great journalist, African journalist, who chronicled the Somalian famine, which led to We Are the World. Okay,
Mm.
and it was his photography that led Bob Geldof to launch We Are the World, and it was his photography and awareness that brought that about, brought Harry Belafonte and everybody together to make that happen. Quincy Jones, um, he's a spearhead of Last King of Scotland. Ridley Scott got his story, Black Hawk Down, from his journalism of the Somalian War.
Mm.
He's a great individual, and we want to bring his story to light. It's 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 an amazing story. Here's a guy who stepped on an IUD, okay, or whatever they call it, a landmine, blew off his half of his arm. NASA built him a robotic arm so that he could continue the film.
Mm.
It's an amazing story, and his son has a massive archive. And so I'm working with him, man, to try to bring the story, man, to Netflix or Apple TV, wherever we're going to take it. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, that's a great story. So
Yeah.
that's it. That's it, man.
Hey,
It's not
man.
driven by money. It's driven by passion.
Yes, yes, and there's so many things to learn from you regarding being driven by passion, but also being smart and being business savvy. This has been a blast. There's so many other
Yeah.
things I want to pick your brain about, but I want to do that offline as our friendship continues to unfold. And we are onto something really spectacular. There's so many little tie-ins and situations that are brewing in my mind right now. It's
There
exciting.
are, there are, especially when you're passionate about it. I mean, because there are so many, it allows you. I mean, I'm dealing with the great Norman Seath, who's a great photographer who has this great story from being a physician in apartheid in South Africa, and he leaves here to come become a great photographer in New York, and he becomes one of the greatest photographers, entertainment photographers of all time. I mean,
Oh, I've
he's
seen his
this is the
work.
good.
Incredible.
Yeah, well, yeah. So he's a close friend and a fantastic individual, and so helping them and inspiring them to bring their archives to life, it will be a great treasure. And, you know, he's got a great Charles Hanna who works with him, his manager. He's doing a great job in trying to get his story out there because I'm telling you, it's really awesome work.
Yeah.
And so I'm more passionate about that. I don't like begging people for money. I'm not using my money, okay, to make movies, okay. I've already been down that route,
Yeah.
but I do have a great bank behind me that will give me debt. So if anybody wants to have any equity, wants to come to me, we can make movies.
Hey, man. Well, hey, food for thought, and we'll
You
be
have a,
talking.
I got a great bank behind me, so but I don't use my stripes, man. There are a lot of things to do,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of things we can talk to you. I'm really fast. I'm really proud of you, man. Where you've come from, you have made a great pivot in this COVID. You've
Thank
made a
you.
great opportunity by building this blog for yourself and bringing great stories like this. And that's I'm telling you, Dewey, man, will be so proud of you, man, and what you're doing. And
Thank you.
you were a great friend to him, man, and I love you for that, man,
Mm,
because without him, he wouldn't even had the short period of time that he had that we had in his last
mm,
days without you. And you've done a great job for yourself, man.
mm.
I wish you nothing but the best, man, in your life.
Oh, I appreciate you so much, man. This has been a treasure. When I get to LA, man, can we get together? Can we have can we get a meal in a
No, man, I'll
socially?
be in Vegas. I'll be in Vegas before you be here, man. So I'm back and forth. So I just have to run you down. I didn't have your number, but we'll do that.
Let's do that. Let's have dinner and get to know each other more. Thank you for your time, Ray. It's been a blessing.
Yeah, it's been great, man, and congratulations to you, man, on your show, and thank you for letting me continue to share my story.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, God
Ray
bless.
Charles Jr. I'm flabbergasted, ladies and gentlemen. You have just gotten a dose of a lot of richness that I hope is a blessing to your life. I'm sure it will be. And again, it's been
That's
a
the blessing.
complete honor.
Here's the blessing of what the power of God in my life, man, and I recognize that, man, and all that, and I was able to realize what I could do, and so I'm I'm just one of many stories, of great stories, man, about recovery, and that's not the center part of my life, it's a part of it,
Yes.
but I think that just I just want man, it's just a really exciting time to be African American and making African American subject matter and content.
That's
Never
right.
in the history have you been able and so free to be able to tell your stories and to be able to do things. And so and that's why you're doing exactly what you're doing, my friend.
Thank you, man. We're triumphant. God is good.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. God is good. You better believe that.
That's
Yes,
right.
indeed.
The Fine Art of Romance, A Bachelor's Handbook by Elijah Rock. Rhythm is wonderful, long ago and far away. Isn't it a pity? Shall we dance? How long has this been going on? Here's a little duet with me and my super talented friend, Frank Lawson.
Well, I ain't got a nickel and I ain't got a dirty dime, Lord. And if she don't come back, Lord, I think I'm gonna lose my mind. And if she ever come back to stay, it's gonna be another brand new day, Lord. I'm walking with my baby down by the San Francisco Bay.
Hey, tell them the whole story, Frank.
I got the blues from my baby, left me by the San Francisco Bay.
She's long gone, folks.
She's on an ocean liner and she gone so far away.
I bet you she didn't mean to slip that far down.
Well, I didn't mean to hurt her so bad. She was the best girl I ever had. To say goodbye, gonna make me cry.
Bye-bye. Gonna lay down my head and die.
Well, I ain't got a nickel and I ain't got a dirty dime. And if she don't come back, Lord, I think I'm gonna lose my mind. And if she ever come back to stay, it's gonna be another brand new day, Lord. I'm walking with my baby down by the San Francisco Bay.
Walk-a-doo,
Well, I'm sitting down looking from my back door. I'm just wondering which way to go, Lord. The woman I'm so crazy about, she says she don't love me no more. Well, I think I'll take my freight train because I'm feeling blue. I'm gonna ride all the way to the end of the line, Lord.
thinking only of you, wow.
Meanwhile, I'm up in the city, Lord. I'm just about to go insane. It seems like I heard my baby, Lord, the way she used to call my name. And if she ever come back to stay, it's gonna be another brand new day, Lord. I'm walking with my baby down by the San Francisco Bay. If she ever come back to stay, it's gonna be another brand new day, Lord. I'm walking with my baby down by the San Francisco Bay.